first of all, thanks guys for joining. I know, as I've mentioned to a couple of you already, it's been difficult trying to get availabilities over the different time zones, and I appreciate the seniority of you guys. It's difficult to get availability, so thank you very much, first of all. Um, I was just saying before I came on, I am by no means an expert, like a podcast expert or anything like that. So please bear with me. I'm still learning and trying to get better at these things. But ultimately, what I wanted to do this because, I've been doing technical recruitment a long time, but I want to do something different. I want to stand out, but I also want to give back to the engineering community. And I think it's great for engineers, up and coming engineering leaders to hear from experienced people as well. So that's the whole point of this. So topic that we kind of discussed previously and I've picked for today was building how to build a good engineering culture um, throughout the hiring process. I do really want this to flow naturally. I don't want to kind of just be questions and answers throughout. So please, people, just jump in throughout, ask each other questions. Please give personal experience examples, anything kind of related to what we mentioned. Um, I won't keep you longer than 30 minutes either. I appreciate everyone's busy and got stuff to do. So just kind of introducing myself to start things off, and then I'll kind of go around the room and do a quick introduction. But I'm Jake O'Regan. I spoke to all of you individually. I principal technology recruiter for over 8 years. Mainly, first 5 years of my career was across Europe, and the last three across the US. Worked with major brands and helped grow some fantastic startups in the Golang space in particular, and more recently, sort of Golang and engineering leadership type positions. So that's me. Anyone want to go first? Just give a quick intro, and then we'll get going.
Yeah,
I
I'll jump
jump
in.
in. Oh,
Hey, my name's
Matt, go ahead.
Ellis. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I over?
No, you good. Please go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, Vikas. Yeah, hey, my name's Matt Ellis. I'm the VP of Engineering at Cathmere. We're a fintech startup building a new blockchain finance product.
Awesome.
I'll jump in next. Because Matt, and I'm surprised you call my name absolutely perfectly. I've seen sometimes people call it Vikas, but yeah, it's Vikas. Thanks for that.
Noted.
Yeah, yeah. I've been a senior eng manager, and I've been handling various leadership positions in the past for over 12 years now in different startups. So currently leading EdTech space. We are in K to 12 and higher education space. No surprise, everybody jumped in that space during COVID. But yeah, I'm sticking around still here. Yeah, happy to connect.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Vikas.
My name's Aaron, currently Director of Engineering at Prizepicks. For a daily sports fantasy company. And particularly at Prizepicks, we've seen a lot of growth over the past year since I've been there. So, culture's come up in conversation a number of times and how we preserve that as we grow quickly. So
Awesome. Thanks very much, Aaron. Andy.
Last. So my name's I've been in software engineering domain for about 19 years now. Pretty traditional career path, developer, senior, and then into management. So I've been in management roles for about 9 years as well. So I've been doing this for a while. I work with big companies as well as the startups, and yeah, happy to be here. Nice to meet everyone.
Brilliant stuff, guys. Thank you very much. Basically, like I said, I'll be here. No one wants to hear from me. No one wants to hear my opinions on things because ultimately they want to hear from you guys as the experts. So, I kind of sent out originally a few sub questions, which is stuff that I thought was important and to kind of kick us off. But if anyone wants to kind of go first, I'd love to hear everyone's kind of individual opinions on a few things and then kind of get a group discussion going, I suppose. But anyone want to kick us off with what, in their opinion, is a good engineering culture, or what makes a good engineering culture?
yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this a bit before the call, and we talk about a lot about culture, in terms of the bells and whistles and the benefits that we get. But really, when I think of culture, it's kind of the work environment that you want to have for your employees in general. So I think about that in terms of creating an environment of psychological safety where developers are, encouraged and feel comfortable being able to communicate and collaborate. And that also implies having managers and leadership who really care about employees and can be empathic and just want to start a conversation around that because it's one of the things that drives our culture at Prizepicks.
Brilliant. Anyone got the thing to?
Yeah, I'll echo most of it. And I do have experience with working with startups as well as with Microsoft. So there's such a huge difference between the culture of a startup space and a big company. Largely, it's the same around, you have to have ownership and good code and all those kind of things. But the one thing that I've seen very different between the two industries or sides of industries is a fast pace in the startup. Like you do not want your shelf life of a software is probably not as long as in a bigger company. So you're not thinking writing a code which can be maintained and can live for next 5 years in our startups. You're looking for more agile, like, okay, can this get us from point A to point B? And sometimes you do cut shortcuts, you do have a smaller budgets, you do have a smaller team, so the code is not probably as maintainable. Oftentimes we adding more to the technical debt just to get ahead with the competition, get to the next big sale, get to the next big funding round. But we try to still maintain a fine balance, and that's really critical to maintain that kind of fine balance. Just copy pasting everything and every different kind of language. Some would argue, having 10 different programming languages across the same code base is okay. But with a smaller team size, you kind of want to have more of a harmony of what you want to do. And yeah, but once you go through the stages, oftentimes after C or D, you try to bring the more mature processes around, your code reviews get more stringent, then you don't allow anything to just go into your code base and those kind of things. So yeah, that's I think the biggest difference I've seen between the two culture. Otherwise, largely, yeah, the ownership and the transparency and communication, those are kind of mutual in both environments.
Brilliant.
I
Matt,
You don't mind me jumping in here, Jake?
no, I was just about to say, Matt, Andy, anything to add? That would be great.
Yeah, culture is kind of slippery for me sometimes, at least in terms of a definition, right? And I think everyone has in their mind something very different than when you say engineering culture or team culture. And so the way I try to define it is culture is the set of behaviors that we want to see, and those behaviors should really be driving the values that we care most about, right? And so if you care about engineering excellence, you're going to want to see behaviors in the engineering organization that focus on platform stability, observability, right? Testing. If you care about, speed of delivery, velocity, agility, you're going to want to see behaviors within the team that really promote getting things done quickly and overcoming roadblocks as fast as possible. And so, in that, I think culture is certainly something that is very purpose built for each organization. And there are elements of culture that apply to lots of different organizations. But really, each organization is going to have its own values. And that's really should drive the behaviors that you establish within the teams to really make sure that everyone has an opportunity to demonstrate those values. Something that's caught me off guard a little bit recently was really just that. Joined this company Cathmere very recently, and we're at the phase that we're building everything from the ground up. I am the engineering team right now. I need to go hire out the rest of the organization. And so every move we make, every decision we make sets the culture of the organization. And even coming out of a scale up phase, startup, what I'm looking for now in the team and the values and the behaviors I'm looking for are really quite a bit different than where I was before. And so previously we were very focused on observability, reliability, platform, engineering efficiency, right? All these things that take an engineering organization from 50 or 100 and get it to the point of 500, right? And help you scale operations and start producing more and more product. All of that is really not relevant to launching an MVP, right? And so instead, what I'm looking for now, I found, is those, building an organization that deals with massive uncertainty, right? We don't have a clear product definition. We've got a clear vision, but don't have a clear product definition, don't have an architecture, are still working out some of the edge customer cases as well. And so building an engineering team that can function in that environment and still produce softwares and make progress really takes a very different set of behaviors than those that are working in a scale-up organization. And so I've had to adjust my mindset quite a bit as I look for engineers to bring on the team to say, okay, I need to start searching not just for engineering excellence, but I need to search for this mindset that will help us get out our MVP.
Just on that, Matt, I just thought, could you see yourself maybe go through an interview process with someone who's technically amazing for the position, but then maybe doesn't align so much with the values and what you say in there? And could that ultimately cost that person the job? Would you be in a position to?
Oh, that's an
Yeah.
absolute non-starter,
Yeah.
right? And that's really, I think, value screening is one of the very first things I do.
Right.
At any organization, not just here, right?
Yeah.
And I hate getting into a position where we fall in love with a candidate that has maybe all the technical skill sets we want, but just doesn't match the organization,
Right.
because they're not going to work, right? You're going to bring them on board.
Yeah.
They're going to be around for 6 months to a year, and they're going to leave because they're not happy. You're not happy. They're not meeting the type, even though they're doing great work, it's not the great work that you want done. And so I think you have to be pretty honest with yourself early on whether or not a candidate you're speaking to really exhibits the values or shares the same values that you have in the organization.
Brilliant. Okay.
There's even bigger risk. You said they would leave. I would say they probably would not leave, right? And that's a bigger problem to have, having a wrong candidate, and now you have to get them to a point where you fire them, or they would spoil the culture of the other team.
Yeah, and I think culture is one of those things that, you have a culture whether or not you're intentional about it. It's kind of defined by those early leaders and employees. So it's going to be really important at the beginning of your company to pay attention to the kind of people that you're hiring.
Definitely.
Well, yeah, just adding from my experience, going last, I pretty much echoing everybody have said, but actually interviewing for a new role, actually. So I'm actually going through a lot of different interviews. So I think first off, like the hiring manager around, they actually do kind of check on your values, like, what's your mindset like and all that to keep you getting to the next round of like testing your technical expertise. But and to echo Vikas, right? I've been in a big company where they say like it runs like a startup, right? You guys all hear this, so it makes sense why they want to execute like a startup, so you can move fast and everything too. No matter how many employees are, they want to break the teams down to smaller. I've been in small startups where it's only few employees as well, which will also move very fast as well. So I think this is why I think a lot of companies now do always talk about being agile and trying to execute like lean, just so I can move fast and everything. So, but yeah, I think everything everyone has said so far, I think makes up like a great culture. That's something that when I'm interviewing, that's the first thing I ask about as well, about what the engineering cultures is like as well. And to echo what Matt was saying, like I can read the values that they have documented, right? But it's different when when you're hearing from their employees directly. So that's something I definitely want to learn more about.
Yeah. So just I'll start with you then, Andy. Just kind of keep it moving. What would you consider or a bad engineering culture for and any bad experiences that you've had in toxic workplace or anything like that, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, just pretty naturally the opposite of everything that was said. But I mean, to call out some more specific ones that I've seen, I think like empowerment, autonomy, decision making. I think I've been in environments where decisions are coming from top down or directly from like product manager, not letting the team have like a more voice and letting them think about the problem and try to solve it themselves in a way. Because otherwise, they're always creating like these smaller solutions that can only satisfy whatever was being asked at the time. But giving them a little more flexibility and room, I think you could like kind of build in innovation into like the process early on in software development where I think you will have a better solution coming out of it. Yeah, I mean I'll throw in one for now, just
Yeah,
decision. Yeah.
brilliant. Anyone else got thoughts on bad engineering culture?
I mean, one of the bad thing about any culture or any org is the resistance to change or accepting the change. So um, that's one thing, especially when you build a startup. Let's say I have joined a couple of pre-seed stage startup and took them to like 50 plus people. Like Matt said, the early employees they start a culture. They set a tone, they set a culture, and it becomes anyone new joining. They just kind of blend into the same culture. But you reach a point where you realize that that's not the culture. That's the culture. I keep calling it culture, but that way of working is not working. So we might want to bring certain changes, and there the biggest problem is then the people have this baggage and that but we always done it this way, but it has always been this way. No, it should not change. Why it should change? That resistant to change or even trying out new ideas, that is one of the biggest problem in a startup world. And another example I'll give you is we acquired this company, smaller company, and for the last 2 years, I've been integrating it into this big org. Um, Kind of giving you an example of would you hire a bad culture fit? I went to actually firing us who was VP of engineering before we hired this guy before we acquired this company because he was technically he was great. He single-handedly built this company. He's technically really excellent, but the entire team was just he was dragging entire team down, the other people, because he had such a strong baggage. No, we're not gonna do that, or we can't do that. So just by getting that one person out and bringing a fresh kind of mind into the team, that the team was capacity was reduced, but they were producing more, and their morale was much higher. They just everyone started contributing. They just contributing into the cross different. So the back end people were started contributing. Even in front end, they were showing motivation to learn and pick up new things. So yeah, um, I'm all up for getting the right person in the place, and then it's easy to train them the technology, but it's really hard to change the culture or mindset of these people.
Yeah.
I did just interview a company going through the same exact thing. There's an older company that's
Yeah.
been for a while, and they just need change. A new CTO joined the company, like kind of leading the same change and just bringing new perspectives and fresh ways of doing
Yeah.
things. Because they've been doing the same thing over and over for like more than 2 decades.
Awesome.
Sort of following on this, you talk about the challenge of maybe someone who's not a great culture fit. What I've seen as a company grows is that the engineering culture does need to change quite a bit over time, and that the culture that is successful in engineering at that MVP stage is not the culture that's going to be successful at scale up. And so it's not just the company that might be resistant to the shift in culture. It can be the engineers themselves, right? And the very things that you hired someone for initially and made them successful initially may actually end up being a detriment. And so it's it's a tough discussion to have with some engineers, to sort of acknowledge that the world has changed and that there's a need for them to grow in a different direction now. And I think all the truly great engineers are able to hear candid feedback like that, and take that as an opportunity to grow themselves. But it does put engineering leaders in a very uncomfortable position at times. And it does take a real commitment to be intentional about the culture you want to build in the organization, because it's not the sort of thing that will happen on autopilot. Or if you do, it's not going to be constructive. And so I guess it's something you want to always be aware of, is whether or not your team culture is right at that time, or whether or not it's something that needs to start to change.
Awesome.
I agree. And following up on that, I think it's sometimes helpful to be explicit about the culture that we're wanting to create in companies. And we went through this at Prizepicks as we've been growing. Kind of had a series of offsites with leadership, engineering managers, and at some point we, specifically defined what our culture was, because there's just that sort of like just felt culture, and then there's processes which can change all the time depending on what's going on in the organization. But just to define like what the underlying values and goals of the company were, we created an acronym called Use the Force. So fun, ownership, respect, communication, empathy. And we would repeat that at every engineering all hands that we had, and quiz the engineers on it and make sure they understood what those values were. So yeah, just another call out for being explicit about what your culture is and what you're trying to create at the organization that you're at.
Brilliant. More of a question that I just kind of thought of off the top. How hard is it to? It's one thing managing culture when you're in person in an office and you're with people every single day. How difficult is it to keep a good engineering culture remotely? I imagine that brings its own problems. Just putting it out there to the group, by the way. That's not.
Let me try that. It can be, but it can be hard in a sense that you're not there to observe
Hmm.
how they're carrying that culture, or how they're carrying that torch to kind of have the same values. But at the end of the day, it's all, you try to set some framework that how there has to be certain processes around it. But let's just say code review practices. That could be one of the engineering culture value, that every code has to pass certain level of checks and balance and all those kind of things. And if people are constantly, let's say, just trying to skip that, they're always, the code reviews are getting, they have to go back and forth, let's say 5 times code reviews, it has to be checked. So that means they clearly are not paying attention to checking their own code before putting it onto someone else's plate. So that's not always a good engineering culture, where someone is just expecting someone else to review and find problems in their code. For me, that require, okay, that's usually things in a remote setting. In office setting, that is often avoided because people are sitting in a close proximity. They just simply ask those things before even opening a PR. So that thing doesn't get captured very often in office. But in remote setting, that will highlight more often. So you have to be extra careful and make sure you do your own due diligence before throwing it onto someone's plate. Because oftentimes these other people who are reviewing your code, they already have their own stuff. This is not their full-time job. This is an added advantage or added responsibility. Oftentimes it comes to me as engineering leader in a startup space. I try to review as much code as possible and try to give them the guidance and a framework instead of pinpointing, change this line, change that line, so that they can go back and try to fit that in the framework.
Thank you very much.
I want to add a little bit to this topic as well. So, pre-pandemic, everyone was in person, right? It was in real remote culture. So, like, and then became a manager, managing teams. It was more natural in person, right? You see them every day, like you were saying, like sitting next to each other. Even like the weekly textings, like you're like, more involved when you're in person, like sitting next to each other. You can see their demeanors and all that. You even sometimes go to lunch, like just more interaction naturally in person. But since post-pandemic, I've joined companies remotely, being in the leadership position, leading new members, and me like trying to come up with a weekly texting is very different remotely, right? Uh, like people can opt out more easily in a remote environment. I'm busy and I'm in another meeting, or sometimes they turn the camera off thing that could impact like how they're just working together. So definitely, I find it more challenging in a remote environment for sure. Definitely, you have to put in way more effort than in person, I think. But I agree, though, a lot of the processes can help. And and one thing I really loved and I felt like it worked is we did roll out like the Spotify team model. So one of the concepts like guilds really helped because guilds you could just spin up a new guild and create a topic around that guild to get more people actively talking to one another. But I'm sure there's other ways I can help as well in a remote environment.
Yeah, I've worked in remote environments for a long time, and I feel like, I mean, there's definitely still culture when we work remotely. I just think communication becomes so much more important. For like we vote on our values at Prizepicks every year, and communication always comes up as one of the top ones. It's sort of our default is over communication. Um, and then I also think fun, again, this plays a big role in creating culture in remote environments. So we have, different Slack channels for like fur babies and people that are interested in video games or investing, so that we can have, spin up those environments for people to connect, kind of like what you'd be doing around the water cooler at work. Definitely still opportunities to do that in remote environments.
Brilliant.
No, we just have a minute here. But talking about remote cultures or building culture in a remote engineering team, I think the number one most useful or powerful tool in your tool chest is writing and building a strong culture of written communication. The rigor it takes to put ideas down on paper, whether it's a design doc or a code review, providing effective feedback asynchronously and to think your comments through without hashing them out in real time actually increases velocity in my experience quite a bit over time, but it takes quite a commitment to become effective at that. And so one of the things I really focus on building into any of the teams I work with is improving the quality and the quantity of writing that's done in the organization.
Thanks so much, guys. I'm obviously conscious of time. I know people have got places to be, but just to finish off, I have one question that I'd like to pose to each of you, and you probably weren't expecting this, but I don't want to put anyone on the spot. But what advice would you give a young aspiring engineering leader or an engineer that's wanting to break into the engineering leadership type position? What advice would you give to them in your position now, which will help them create a better culture for their future teams?
I know I'm conscious of time. I would ask that person, do they really want to be the engineering leader for the title, or they really, really enjoy talking to the people? Because 90% of the time you would be talking to the people, and the rest of the time, whatever you left is actually doing some of the other work. But if you do not really enjoy talking to the people, really listening to their challenges, and trying to find and trying to put yourself to build their professional career. And there's one of my thing. I want my engineers to actually go from my teams, to be honest. I want them to grow to a level where they are able to either climb the ladder within my team if there's an open position, or just look for the cross team. Or if the R cannot provide them opportunity, please go ahead and go. I want them to improve. And if I cannot provide that, then I'm kind of failing as engineering manager.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump in here because I'm afraid I do have to drop. But Vikas, I think you hit it right. It's whether or not someone has a passion about being a leader, and are you, the way I look at that is, are you more interested in being successful yourself or in promoting the success of others, right? And so really look very closely at how someone spends their time, and whether they have an inward or an outward focus. I've never seen anyone with an inward focus be truly successful in an engineering leadership position. That they have to invest in building the success and capability of those around them.
So much.
I would say, echoing what the others have said, develop your empathy skills. As engineers, we're responsible for getting work done. As engineering managers and leaders, we're responsible for the people who are getting the work done. It's a different way of thinking.
Awesome, thank you.
I'll just add, stay curious. Just be curious. Like be wanting to learn more, interact with many others. I think it's only going to grow your future.
Awesome, guys. I will leave it there. I'm conscious Matt's had to jump off, and I don't want to keep you all from your day, but genuinely, thank you all so much. I know to organize something like this with people in your positions is fantastic for me personally. It's going to be great for the people to listen to their answers, to your answers, and to learn. So just genuinely thank you for taking the time to do this with me. And yeah, I've found it really beneficial. I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as you can. And yeah, thank you so much.